big takeaways, what we want you to be comfortable with, familiar with after this seminar is being comfortable using our website. We are accepting any and all licensing materials online through a portal. That website portal actually is collecting about 90% of our new applications as of right now. So what we want you to do is to be, again, familiar and confident in using the portal. We want to avoid application errors and deficiencies. So a lot of times applicants will simply forget to sign something or include a photocopy of something. We'll go over what the most common deficiencies are in an application. Then finally, and often most important is we're here. I'm Chief of Operations and I'm the Ombudsman. So I'm pretty well versed in the agency. You have the Chief of Licensing, the individual in charge of the department that will be reviewing your applications, as well as Assistant Chief of Licensing, who manages directly the applicant reviewers. So there is basically no question we cannot answer in your journey of obtaining a license. And it shouldn't be a journey. It should just be filling out paperwork, getting the right paperwork together, and getting it to us. So I just want you to keep that in mind. It's we want this to be, we as an agency are finding reasons to license you. You just need to provide us the information that's required by statute. Okay. Miss Julie.
All right. Good morning, everybody, and welcome again. As Jim mentioned, we are here to help you get licensed. So these are the common application errors. So the top 5 reasons that applications have errors and thus then get a deficiency letter from us is the qualifying party experience. So either not providing any or not providing enough detail. We'll go over that again later. The bond is a common error. So either not including the bond or not including the right information on the bond. We'll go over that. The ID, everyone on the license needs to submit an ID that's current. That's a government issued ID that can be driver's license or a passport. And then testing. There's the statute and rules test and the trade exam, or there are waivers that you can provide. So we'll go over that later. And then background checks. Everyone listed on the application needs to have a background.
Cool. And just to be clear with everybody, whenever we issue a deficiency, we're not returning your application. It's not the end of the road. What we're going to do is we're going to reach out to you in snail mail. Okay. We're going to reach out in snail mail. We're going to email you, and we're going to call you and inform you of the deficiency that you can cure. Where the delays occur is if you've not run a background check, then that's going to take time. And not for us, it's going to take time for the background check company to fulfill your request to run the background check. If you've not taken the test, it's going to take time for you to get into the testing center to actually take the test. You can see where I'm going with this. It's not the end of the road, but depending on what it is, it can take time to cure the issue. And Julie, I muted you when I muted everybody, so you'll just have to unmute yourself again.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So we are a cabinet level agency. We report directly to the governor. Licensing is made up of, the registrar is made up of 3 departments. Licensing is the department that I'm chief of. Licensing is who processes the 4,000 and some applications that we get every year. So licensing will review your application. We issue licenses and we maintain those licenses. So anything that you need to do after you get your license, whether it's updating an address or changing a name, we would be responsible for helping you with that. Then there's also the compliance department. Compliance investigates complaints, unlicensed and licensed complaints, and they recommend citations and refer those to legal. Legal definitely supports us and compliance. They suspend based on citations. They administer the recovery fund.
Yeah. And Lionel, I saw your question. Does the qualifying party or QP submit a ID on the application? Yes, they do submit a government ID, and a lot of times, Julie, I missed it if you said it, um, but a lot of times what our issue is with the ID is either number one, they forgot to include a copy, or number two, it's no longer valid. So it does have to be valid. It cannot be an expired ID. But those are the two biggest deficiencies that we see in ID. Then we'll cover what everyone has to turn in as we go through this process.
Right.
Um, yeah.
All right, so you can submit an application a couple of ways, but 90% of our applications are now submitted through our online portal. And we're going to go over how to connect to that. It's very convenient. You can access it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, unless we're doing maintenance, but that's very rare. So that's a really easy way to get your application to us. It arrives to us as soon as you pay and everyone signs. It arrives immediately, practically, and then we would start reviewing it. You can still mail in an application. And if you really, really want to, you can schedule an appointment and drop off the application in person.
And Julie's going to go through how to connect on the portal, but I will warn you, we are aware it is not the most forthright process at the moment. It's not it's not as simple as, you know, I don't know. Yeah, doing a lot of the private organization things that you would do in your private life. Um, what we what we're basically doing is making sure that the person attempting to connect to a business entity is the person that's allowed to connect to that entity. So, in other words, Stephen, you would not be able to simply connect to McCarthy. We have to do some sort of background work to make sure that you do belong in that company's information. So that's why it's not exactly forthright or direct, but we'll go through it with you right now.
And Miranda, yes, we do recommend that you get your tests taken because if you submit your application without those tests and then you happen to fail, we would have to return your application because we only give you 30 days to correct errors or give us any missing items. All right, so the information required to create an account. If you're a brand new company, you're applying for the first time, you would go on to our website and create this. What we need is an authorized rep's information so that if you are doing it, that's your name. If you want a spouse or an office worker to do it, it would be their name. But the name, a valid email address, and preferred contact method, plus some security questions. Just like when you're going onto your bank, you have security questions so you can get back in if you forget passwords, etc. Then we need the business entities information. So the type of entity you're applying as. We'll go over these later, but there are several different types of entities. So if you're a sole proprietor, that is you and your name. Or if it's a partnership, that's your name and your partner's name, or the name of the partnership. Then if you're an LLC or corporation, we would need the name as it appears on the Arizona Corporation Commission and the file number for that entity. Then we need a valid email address for the entity, physical business address, and phone number. So to get to our portal, you would go to our website. That's www.roc.az.gov. And then at the top on the left, circled in red here on the slide, you go to My Account and then you log in there.
And I see a question from Mo. What if I already have an LLC in another state? So what you would have to file with our Arizona Corporation Commission is authority to do business with inside the state, or it goes by many different names, but Jesse will look it up and post it for you. There it is. Um, foreign corporation is what they refer to it as. So you would just file that, and then you would show up in the Arizona CorpCom and be able to follow as Jesse or as Julie outlined.
Please note regarding that too, if you're coming from another state, you do have to wait until Arizona Corporation Commission has you completely set up, active, and in good standing. If we receive your application where that happens, we would have to reject it, and you'd have to wait until you are active and in good standing. So the applicant, the entity types, sole proprietor, that's your name as it appears on your ID. As I said, if that includes a middle initial or a middle name or junior or senior, those things would be included. And on a partnership, as I said, if it's 2 people or 3 people, it's each person's name exactly as it appears on their government ID. Partnerships can also set up under a name, but either way. Corporations, exactly as the name appears with the Arizona Corporation Commission. So there can't be any variations. It has to be like it says at Corp Commission. LLCs, the same thing.
And what do you mean by that, Julie? Like,
I'm sorry. Okay.
Spaces, periods.
Spaces, periods. Mostly it's the name exactly. So if the name is HD Services LLC with Corporation Commission, it can't be Howard DuPont Services LLC on your application. It has to be exactly as it appears at Corp Commission. So you can go to Corporation Commission. Just if you need a reminder, look up the name of your LLC or Corp, and that's how we need it on your application.
Copy and paste it.
Copy and paste, yes. With a trust, same thing, exactly as the name appears on your trust certificate. DBAs kind of trip people up once in a while. So the DBA, if I was doing business as a sole proprietor, perhaps, or even as an LLC, but my entity name was Julie's Construction. Julie's Construction could have a DBA, Julie's Construction, doing business as Julie's Building. It could be more specific. It could be Julie's Flooring. But the thing you have to remember with DBAs is that they cannot, or entity names, they cannot advertise for a scope of work that's not included in your classification. So if you're getting the flooring license, you can say flooring in your name. But if you do not have the flooring license, then it depends on what classification you are applying for. If you have any questions, definitely email us or call us. DBAs do not have to be registered with the Secretary of State, but we do recommend it. It gives you a level of protection. You can also add or remove a DBA at any time through a name change form. So if you want to start out with just a general entity name or a specific entity name, you can do that, and you could add a DBA later.
Yeah, so in the chat, thank you, Julie. In the chat was raised. I started out with the sole prop. Now, for whatever reason, my business has grown, or for tax reasons, I'm deciding to switch to an LLC or a corporation. What do I have to do? My best recommendation is if you're changing your entity type, contact the licensing department to see what you need to do. We've seen a lot of changes in legislation recently where some LLCs are able to become other LLCs through mergers, conversions. At that time, whenever you get to that point, check with the agency, because whatever answer we're going to give you right now, like Jesse gave you, that's our current answer, but that might not be the actual answer in a couple years, because again, the legislature keeps changing the laws on that, trying to benefit you as a business. But yeah, just contact the agency if you're switching from one entity type to another.
All right, so which license classification you apply under? We have 3 umbrella areas of license classifications. There's general contracting, specialty subcontracting, and engineering classifications. Jesse will put the link to those classifications on our website. If you don't know your classification, I definitely recommend going there to research. We have, I think it's 155 classifications, so there's almost everything out there to fit whatever you might want. The thing to remember is subcontracting, the specialty classifications are specific to, flooring, roofing, plumbing, things like that. Whereas the general contracting are broader licenses and do bigger, more varied things.
Yeah, and the only other thing that I'd cover under general contracting is it's correct to say none of them allow for you as the licensee to self-perform HVAC, plumbing, electrical, or broilers. Correct? You would need to either get an additional license for that specifically, or subcontract to one of those properly licensed contractors.
Correct. So I definitely recommend going to our classifications page and reading the description of all the classifications that you might be interested in.
Yeah.
If you really are still confused after that and you don't know, you can fill out a scope request on our forms page detailing what it is you plan to do, and then we would send you a letter back confirming which classification that would fall under.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just pause real quick. So what we've told you so far is that the Arizona Registrar of Contractors, as opposed to some other states, licenses a business as opposed to individuals. So I'm from Ohio, where individuals are licensed on the municipal level, meaning if I wanted to work in multiple cities, I would have to get a license in each city that I plan to work. And the state of Arizona, we don't license the individual, we license a business. But under each business, you're required to have a qualifying party who is the responsible managing employee. And they, for the purposes of the application, are the ones who are responsible for passing the exams, having the experience, and providing all the other required information that Julie's going to go through now.
Right. So the qualifying party is the person on the license who is going to be responsible.
Says template that MJ is explaining. So technically, those files.
You're good.
Sorry. Okay.
Yes,
so
you've mentioned as well.
Okay, you're good again.
Okay. Sorry. All right. So the qualifying party is the person on your license who has the experience, who has taken the testing, and who is going to be the responsible person going out, checking all of the things that you're doing every day. So the qualifying party has to have taken and passed the statute and rules exam. And there was a question earlier. It does not have to be a specific percentage, except that you need to have passed the statute and rules exam and the trade exam. So we don't look at the number except where it has to do with passing or not passing.
And Lionel will go over out-of-state waivers here in a couple minutes. So if you still have a question about whether an individual out-of-state can be a QP, follow up with us after that.
Right. So there's the statute and rules exam, the trade exam, and then his experience. So experience can have been from anywhere, and you don't have to have been a qualifying party before to have the right experience. So you do need to show dates of employment, the hours of work per week that you worked, and the position that you held. So we do look at managerial or hands-on experience when it comes to the trade that you're working. You do have to give us detailed description of experience. The thing to remember is that perhaps you were involved, excuse me, in all aspects of building, but you want to get a roofing license, then we need to see your experience as it pertains to roofing. Or if it's the electrical license that you want, but you've also done remodels. We don't need the experience on the remodels, we need the experience for the classification you're applying for. So if that's electrical, it needs to be electrical experience. And then we need a reference. The reference cannot be named on the license or the application, but it can be anyone that maybe you worked with, a supervisor, a coworker, sorry, and or somebody that you dealt with, but they have the knowledge of that 2 or 4 years of experience. Most of our license classifications require 4 years of experience. There's some of them that are only 2, but you do have to be detailed in your description. So the other thing that the qualifying party needs for the application, we need your name as listed on your government ID. We need your date of birth, your social security number, and then a form of ID that can either be a passport or a driver's license. The residential address for that qualifying party, phone number, email, and then we need title and position. So it might be obvious that the qualifying party is going to be the qualifying party, but you do need to fill that out. Some qualifying parties are also owners or presidents. You'll fill that information out on the forms. And then the background check. The background check, like we said before, it has to be valid within 90 days of submitting your application. So often people will get some of these things ready months in advance of when they actually apply. You just need to make sure that that background check is within 90 days. Otherwise, we will request a new one.
Okay, so Julie, you've created a firestorm of questions. All right, so Mike is asking, does the trade exam need to be taken prior to submitting the license application? Some states allow, some state boards allow to take the test based on experience, history, reference. No, we do not require that. Our testing vendor will seat anybody who registers, so you don't need prior approval from us to go take the test. You would be able to take the test, and if you pass, then fantastic. If you don't pass, you can register again to take the test again. So no, you do not need to apply first to be seated for the exam. Is there a residency requirement for the qualifying party, Julie?
The qualifying party does not have to show residency, no. But they do have to be available to oversee the work that's being done on a day-to-day basis. So you need to remember that. So we do have people that move here. Maybe they moved here yesterday, or maybe they're in overseas because they're in the military and they haven't moved back to Arizona yet. They can apply for a license, but as long as once they have the license and they're doing work, they are here to oversee that work.
And Jacqueline, you just came fresh off the floor not too long ago. What's an example of good experience that's provided, and what's an example of bad experience, a bad submission of experience? So I guess I'll ask you to kind of divide it between general and then specialty contractors, because I think it does differ quite a bit if you're applying for a general. So if you're applying for a general, what would represent a good background?
So for experience, we do see that's okay. We see a variety that come in. So we want to see, as much detail as you would like to give us. As far as general, like Julie was saying, it's going to be a variety of trades. So you can include that in your general application. Most of them, we're looking to see if it's like a KB1, which is one of our largest licenses. That would be a dual ground up experience type of classification. So we want to be seeing large buildings, things over $2 million, since that is the difference between a KB2 and a KB1 is the dollar amount. So large projects where we can see that you've actually overseen the job site, doing ground up builds, so entirely new construction, or we'd be wanting to see that you're hands-on doing that kind of work. So like Julie said, managerial does count, but we would be wanting to see that you oversaw the actual job site rather than maybe being in accounting or something that you weren't really around those people working on the construction site. So just something to be aware of is we are going to look to see, do you have the level of experience for the classification? So generals being more trades, usually types of things like ground up builds. And we want to see that in your experience. And like Julie said, we need to see a reference in regards to that as well. They just can't be listed on your application. But that would be your more general trades. In the example of the KB1, if you're looking at doing a dual classification, you'd want to make sure you are mentioning that you've done both residential and commercial builds if you've done that. Whereas if you're doing just a B1, which would be a commercial version of that, you could list your commercial trades. But that's something people often miss, is letting us know, all of their experience. I've done residential and I've done commercial. Just mention that in there.
And then specialty. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry. One other thing we like to see too is that you have managed other trades when you're applying for those big licenses. So you've managed other subcontractors and the like.
Yeah. And then specialty, we'd be looking more for what, I guess?
Be more individualized to your actual trade, like Julie was saying. If you're applying for a plumbing license, we'll want to see details of your trades that actually were in relation to plumbing. You don't need to include necessarily your electrical experience, since this is a specialty license and you're looking to get that specific trade licensed. So in those types of cases, we still have the dual classification versus maybe a commercial or just residential. So you could be, a plumber for residential, you could be a plumber for commercial, or you could do commercial and residential. Again, just mentioning that you've done both if you're applying for a dual for commercial and residential, and then giving us those specific details of what you've done. So some people will just say, all aspects of plumbing. And while that is great that you've done all aspects, we want to see exactly what that is. So we know exactly what you've done, and we can feel comfortable with moving forward with that application. And like Jim said, if you provide, just a short, brief explanation like the all aspects of plumbing, we'll still reach out to you to ask you for more information. It just delays that application a bit. So if you can be more thorough in your explanation, installed septic tanks, did drainage lines, whatever it happens to be that you're working with, those specific types of tasks that you've either overseen or that you've done hands-on really helps to clarify that for us without having to make it a deficiency and delay that application.
Cool. Thank you, Jacqueline.
Yeah.
Okay, so individually, a question was posed to Jesse. If I want to do something in a grocery store, so commercial, and somebody's home, residential, is there a CR type? Jacqueline just covered it, but yeah, we have residential. I guess all the way back at the beginning, Julie mentioned that we have about 150 license classifications. A lot of those are repeated. So we have a set of commercial, we have a set of residential, and then we have the dual licenses for each of those. So you would just want to apply for, if you're planning on doing commercial and residential, just get the dual license. So that would be the answer to that. Stephanie, no, it does not have to be a Arizona-specific driver or government license or ID. It just has to be a government-issued ID that is valid. I paid my fees to PSI and asked them to send me. I scrolled right past it. Send me the reading material for this statute and rules exam. Their response was, your board will provide and inform us. Julie?
So Jesse could probably provide the link, but the test is based on our statute and rules. I don't know if you've already listed that in the chat, Jesse.
It looks like right above that question. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just add.
Okay, so Jesse will add that in the chat, but it is based on our statutes and rules, just like the name implies. So you would want to, you can print that off or just access it online to study those.
Okay, so real quick, Jacqueline mentioned ground up. That sparked the question, is ground up limited to a number of floors or stories? Ground up is more just the description of nothing existed on the property before, but you're turning it into a developed property. So that it's not specific to stories or floors. Trade exam, Jesse, if this question is related to what are the requirements for the C67 and for horizontal boring and laying cables. So what I'll have Jesse do is post a link to the classification requirements. So this will list all of the classifications and the requirements. Statute and rules exam is required for every single license classification. Trade exams, as this individual is getting to, don't all require I think we only have one classification that doesn't require a trade exam at this point, but not all of them do. So the And then the third item that this classification chart will identify for you is number of years of experience you have to submit with your application. And then your third question, this again, it was sent privately, but if you have any questions about what scope or what classification you need to get, as Julie said, there is a scope determination letter that you can submit. So this individual is working telecommunication lines, cell phone towers, and rooftops. Just send that over to the licensing department and they'll give you back the obviously, our hope is to only tell you one license that you need to obtain to perform all the work that you need to perform. But as I already said, if you're looking to mix general and any of those plumbing, electrical, HVAC, then we probably won't be able to tell you one license application or one license classification. But outside of that, we're going to try to put you into one. Still got the questions rolling in. And that's just fine. Lionel, can you subcontract to plumbing, electrical? Can you subcontract plumbing, electric, etc. to a qualified party? So just to be very specific, a qualifying party does not hold a license. The company holds a license. So you as a general contractor, if you're licensed as a general contractor, you would be able to subcontract to any of those trades. As well as if you were a plumbing contractor, you could subcontract plumbing. And if you were electrical, you could subcontract with anything within your scope, you're allowed to subcontract. So hopefully that answers it for you. Does electrical license cover solar installations? Yes, it does, but it has additional provisions that you need to submit with the application if you plan to do solar. Jolie will get into that under the disclosures section, so just make sure you pay attention there. Jesse, question, can you provide the scope determination form? And I think she's looking at it or looking for it. Following question was raised privately. We've only got two more till we get back to the presentation. Was asked privately are the sample questions for the statute and rules bulletin samples. Are the sample questions in the statute and rules exam bulletin samples of both statute and rules exams or trade exams? I apologize. I just don't understand the actual question. I still don't see the statute and rules, statute and regulations that we need to know study before we take the test. The links above just take you to PSI. So Jolie, perhaps you can walk us through how to find the bulletin for the statute and rules exam.
So let's see, if you go to our website, I'm going to have to find it again here.
Can you guys still see my screen? Yep, okay.
Okay, so if you go to the website under, let's see, I might not have been here for a while.
Licensing, testing information.
And then it should have a link to.
You can just look at my screen, Julie.
Oh, sorry. Well, yours is a lot smaller than mine, Jim.
Got it.
I need more powerful glasses to do that. So the statute and rules, if you go, there should be a link in here.
I think that should be pages 5 and 6 for statutes and rules.
Yeah. There we go. Yes, it is. So the reference list, so what you should study and what's open book is going to be these references listed here. And then the sample questions would be these questions.
And also please note that the sample questions may not be questions that you get on the test. I have had that as a comment from test takers before. They are just sample questions. So.
And there will be more than 5, just so you're aware.
Yes.
All right, so question, does the background check include a criminal background check? That is actually all that the background check is. So it is a criminal background check, and it's looking for, so the Registrar of Contractors through statute is allowed to make license considerations based on felonies. We'll talk specifically about the impact of a felony to your application, it looks like pretty soon. Oh, no, wrong presentation. We'll talk about the impact of a felony that it can have on your application, but I can tell you it is not an automatic denial. We 88% of our applications that have a felon applicant listed on the application still receive a license. So don't let that be a deterrent. All exams are open book. Yes, they are. Make sure it is the approved reference material that you're taking in, though. A lot of times individuals say, well, I was told it was open book. It has to be one of the approved reference materials in your bulletin that you're taking in. And I think they also have like no post-it notes and no notes allowed in the reference material, something on that order. So just keep that in mind as you're going in to take the test. All right. So Julie, you covered this, and now we'll go on to exam waivers.
Right. So if you as a person have been a qualifying party on another license in the state of Arizona, you would fill out an exam waiver for the in-state waiver form is what it's called. So if you've been on a license in the state of Arizona in the last 5 years, you could waive the statute and rules exam. And if it is the same classification that you're applying for, that you were a QP on, you could waive the trade exam as well. That would also waive the experience. So if you've been on a qualifying party on a B residential license, for example, you could waive, in the last 5 years, you could waive the statute and rules exam, the trade exam, and your experience would waive also, based on the fact that you were a qualifying party for that same classification in the last 5 years. Now, if you have been on an out-of-state license, so say you were in Ohio or say you were in California, and you were the qualifying party on a residential B general residential license, by filling out our trade waiver form, you would fill out the top, the other state fills out the bottom. And you would submit that to your other state board. And when they send it back to you, you would submit that with your application. And there is a place on the portal for you to upload that information. The statute and rules exam, however, cannot be waived from a qualifying party coming from out of state. Our statute and rules exam is specific to Arizona rules and laws. So you do have to take that exam. It cannot be waived. The experience would also waive if you've been on a license in another state. You might still provide some information there. I was on a general residential license in this other state, so that we have that there. But you would just have to give us the waiver. Now, if your other state does not require a license, there are many states that licensing that we do. But if you were listed as the qualifying party, if there is a website for that state that you can provide to us, whether that's a screenshot or information on where that can be found, we can go and research that and see if that waives. Now, it has to be a same or similar classification. So, for instance, if you were on an electrical license in another state, you cannot waive to the B general residential license. So it has to be same or similar classification to use the waiver. Did I miss anything there?
Nope. The only thing I'll add to that is that's a rather new waiver that we got from the legislature last year or the year before. One of the common questions was, example, I do flooring here in Colorado. It's not a license isn't required for flooring though. Will you waive my trade exam? No, it has to be license to license for the waiver to exist. Yeah, So there's that. And Bubba, if what Jesse just posted in the chat doesn't answer your question, I'll just ask you to come off mute and walk me through what your issue is, and we'll be happy to help you. Mo, is there a?
Oh, sorry, Jim. Just to add to what you said, if that be able to waive the trade, but you can always waive experience. So as long as you give us an example of your experience, we do still need the information, but you can use that information from Colorado. Just explain what you did in the experience section. And it doesn't have to be in Arizona.
Yeah, good point. Gotcha. Okay, so Mo is asking, is there a website you can go to for the waiver on general contracting side from another state? Yeah, sure. It's going to be the same form, whether you're general contracting or specialty. You're going to submit the same exact out-of-state or in-state waiver. Well, they are two different waivers, but if you're submitting in-state, that'll be the same waiver regardless of what classification. If you're submitting out-of-state waiver, that's going to be the same form, and Jesse can provide those. It's also, if you're using the portal, you don't have to worry about forms. You just, depending on what you're clicking, the right boxes are going to show up for you. It's like TurboTax, where depending on what your answers are is depending on what the form you're going to fill out. So it's a guided application.
So who else needs to be listed in the application? So people that are required. For a limited liability company, we need all owners of 25% or more, and all members if it's member managed, all managers if it's manager managed. If you do not remember how it was set up, you can go onto the Corporation Commission website and look up information on your entity, and it will be listed there. For corporations, it's any officer. So president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, whoever is listed at the Arizona Corporation Commission as an officer needs to be listed on the application. This includes also any owners of 25% or more and any directors.
I like my slide on this better.
Okay.
The font's messed up on it, but so if you're applying as a sole proprietorship, it'll be the applicant and their address. If you're applying as a partnership, the names and addresses of all partners with the designation of any limited with the trust, the names and addresses of all trustees, LLCs, and that's where you get into exactly what Julie was saying. If it's a manager managed, then all managers. If it's a member managed, all members, and anybody else who has 25% or more. If you're applying as a corporation, that's where it's the president, vice president, or whatever titles you're using, and all directors, and then anybody who owns 25%, again, more. So this slide, as well as Julie's slide, will be obviously in the recording. So if there's any questions, you can come back to this slide and see exactly what's required. But it's basically what we're taking you through is, the qualifying party is who's responsible for knowing or possessing the knowledge and the skill to perform the work. And then this portion is, as the top of the slide says, who has managerial control over the entity that'll be operating with the license. So we're asking under the qualifying party who's doing the work or who has the knowledge to do the work. And then this portion is who has control over the company. And often a qualifying party will also fall under this portion. But if you're a larger corporation, that's not always true. Okay. Back to you, Miss Julie.
Okay.
And we'll talk about the tiered entity now.
Right. So if your company, if your entity is owned by other entities, so in this example, Red Corporation is owned by Blue LLC and Green Corporation. So you would draw out a map kind of like this and show that. Often companies are just owned by people, and then that's what we need, and you don't need to do the tiered entity chart. So this only applies if your company is owned by other companies, LLCs, corps, whatever it is. And you would follow this kind of diagram until we get to every person or entity who owns 25% or more. Now, on entities, we need the business address. If there's people that own 25% or more that are listed in this chart, they would need to fill out a portion of the application. So they would also need background check, their ID, date of birth, all that information. Then also on this form, someone listed on the application needs to sign as verifying that this information is correct. So the statement at the bottom right corner where it says no person or entity other than those shown here own 25% or more of the application or applicant. Someone needs to sign that, so someone listed on the license. The other thing that we offer is sometimes these get very complicated. I've seen them go, 14 tiers high on some entities. You can fill out this chart yourself, create one of your own, and send that to the licensing department at our email address, and we will review that in advance because sometimes we do need corrections to it. That if it's an entity that's complicated, it might take you a while to get all that information. So that's why we like to offer that you can send it to us in advance so that we can give you input on what else is needed. That way it doesn't hold up your application once you submit your application.
Cool. Thank you, Julie. So Tim is asking, for experience, do we need a reference to back up each individual past job we listed as experience?
No, you just need someone who has overall knowledge that if it's 4 years of experience, they know that, yes, you worked 4 years, you built houses, or you laid floor, or you laid tile. So we only need one reference, but that reference does need to know the whole scope of your work. So your reference can be a customer, but that customer needs to have kind of been around for a while for you so that they know all the aspects that you've done. It can't be just one customer that knows one job.
Cool. And Tim, I'm familiar with what you're asking. Our application used to be what you're implying, that every single job that you used to hold required reference, or or you needed to provide 10 projects with a reference on each. We moved away from that, and we moved more toward like what any other company or job would require is more like a resume. So when I think of you filling out the background, or the not the background, I keep saying that, the experience portion, I think of it as an application where you see the scope that you're applying for, use your experience and use that portion to really say, address each of those scope items, that you've done it here, that you've done that there, etc. Lionel, I'm a bit, so your question, how are the QP exams results connected to the application if they don't own any percentage of the company? I'm not positive if you're asking more of a technical or more of a philosophical question. If it's technical, I can tell you, as part of the application you're filling out, you will identify who your qualifying party is, and the exam will be hooked up at that point. And we do that through the candidate number, I believe. But either way, then philosophically, if it's the qualifying party and their influence in the company, they would. I guess I would ask for you to be a bit more specific if you're asking philosophically about the qualifying party being connected to the business, and then I'll be happy to explain. Stephen, can residential experience qualify as experience when you're applying for a dual license? Yes, it would be used for the residential portion, but you would need to provide commercial experience as well if you're going to be applying for that dual license. Cool. All right. Everyone else is good so far, Miss Julie.
Okay. All right. So requirements for what's needed when you're listing everyone else on the application. So just like the qualifying party, you need, if say Jim and I were both on this license and Jesse was the qualifying party, Jim and I, would both have to have our name, our date of birth, our social security number. We'd have to provide a government issued ID, like I said, passport or driver's license or other government ID. We would want to list all of our contact information. So residential address or business address, phone number, email address, and then our title or position within the company and our percentage of ownership. Or there doesn't have to be any ownership. We could have 0% ownership ourselves if another entity or another person owned the company. And then each person has to provide a background check. So this is something that often, like we said, amounts to a deficiency because it's not just the qualifying party that needs a background check, it's everyone. So you would go, there's a link on the application or applying for a license portion of the website where you can go directly to the background check. You fill out the information there. You have to pay for it. It's about $8. And then once that's finished, once you submit the payment, they send you a receipt. And in that receipt, there's ID number. It's the profile ID number. And you would submit that with the application so that then we can connect that and go look up those results. Excuse me.
Cool.
Then in regards to disclosures, there is a disclosure section, and this applies to every person, again, listed on the license. So if anyone has been on a prior license, whether in this state or another state, you fill out that information. If there's been any unlicensed activity or any suspensions, you need to list that on the disclosure page. Having a suspension does not necessarily disqualify you, but we do need that information and we do look into that information. So any unlicensed citations or convictions, you fill out that information. If there's any felonies, so if anyone listed on the license has had a felony conviction or has, pending charges, please list that information. And we'll go over that a little more, I think, on the next slide. Is that right?
It is. Yep.
Okay. So if anyone has had a felony in the past, Jim will tell you that about 80% or more of our felony applicants are approved and get licensed, but we do look into them nonetheless. So it doesn't matter if it's 20 years old or if it happened last year. We do look into all felony convictions or felony charges. If it started as a felony, it was reduced to the misdemeanor. We still look at that, but I can't guarantee that it would pass, but many of them pass. So the things that we look for in regards to felony documents are the indictment, their plea agreement, pre-sentence report, documentation of sentence, the completion of sentence, the satisfaction of restitution, the order restoring your civil rights. And then you can also provide other supporting documents. You can provide a letter of explanation, letters of reference. We get many of those. And then any certificates that you have, completion of addiction, recovery, other programs that one might have had while they were incarcerated or even just on probation, any certificates showing proper completion regarding the charge of any programs that you've attended. And then personal or professional achievements, whether that's in the reference letters or whether you went back to school or took classes through a trade school, any of that helps as well.
Yeah, and so just to really point out, that first column is what's required to submit. That second column is it's really just supporting if you believe it's necessary for us to get a better understanding of you, depending, I hate to say it, but really depending on what the felony was. Yeah, that's all I'll say on that. As it relates to felony convictions, what I'll say is it's going to be harder for us to look beyond, say, theft on a construction job site or fraud. Those are the types of felonies that we're looking for to. Perhaps a construction license isn't for you if you were fraudulently ripping off people in Sun City for construction work. We're looking for related crimes. If you had a drug conviction from the 90s, we frankly don't believe that should bar you from getting a license. If you have a DUI from 5 years ago, again, perhaps that's not why you should not have a contractor's license. We're looking for relevant crimes where putting you inside somebody's home may cause issues. That's what we're looking for.
So no felony convictions necessarily bar you from getting licensed, but we do look at them. And as Jim said, about 80% do get passed.
88, about 90%.
Okay, sorry.
Let's round up.
Okay, we'll round up. All right, so bonds. Bonds are another area that we get a lot of deficiencies on. So we want to really try and help you create the best bond you possibly can so that you don't get a deficiency letter on that. So there's three types of bonds. Sorry. There's the surety bond. That's the most popular. You contact a surety company. There's many surety companies in Arizona. We have a list on our website. Also, a lot of insurance companies will write a surety bond. You can also provide a cash bond. That's the actual cashier's check for the amount of the bond. We hold that here at the registrar for your license to cover the bond. And then you
Julie,
can also
let me just pause you real quick. Sorry. I know we've hit our allotted time. We will continue with the presentation. If you have to get off the call, no worries. We're going to continue on until we hopefully get finished, and we will still send the recording out to everyone who's attending today. But I don't want to keep you if you're working today and need to get back to work. Then by all means, thank you for attending, and we'll follow up with you or through email. Julie, if you want to keep going.
Okay. So you can also provide a certificate of deposit through an Arizona bank. And if you want to do that, I would recommend reaching out to us via email first, but you can provide the certificate of deposit. I'm sorry. So the amounts for the bond, there are minimum coverage amounts depending on the license classification, and it's based on your estimated annual volume. I know in the beginning, people often don't know what their volume is going to be. So most applicants give us a bond for the minimum amount. You can always raise it later once you see what your annual volume is. If it's above the minimum amount, then you can increase it at that time by sending a bond writer through your bond company. And then we do have this information on our website as well, calculating the bond. So as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen are the types of contractors. So it's the umbrella areas that we talked about before. If you're a residential contractor, that could mean that you're a B residential contractor or a B3. These are all covered under residential general contracting. The minimum amount, if you're doing less than $750,000 a year, or that's what you think you'll be doing that first year, and no more than that, you could get a bond for $9,000. Now, as an example, if you are going to apply as one of our biggest licenses is the KB1. That's a dual license. So you would take the amount, and like I said, you can use the minimum. If you think you're going to do more than that, you can use the larger amount. But you use at least the minimum for the residential side, and then you would go to the commercial side for the commercial general contractor as well. And if it's going to be the minimum there that you're going to pick, it would be the $150,000 or less. That's a $5,000 bond. So you would have a bond that the total amount was $14,000. Now, the bond company would list out both of them separately. So it would list the residential side and the commercial side separately on the bond. Let's see. Was I going to say anything else about that? I don't think so right there. So for the bond company, on the surety bond form, most of the surety companies, the bigger ones, are familiar with our bond. It does need to be on our bond form. That is on our website. It's also included in the app. Just through your bond for this application. One of the biggest, I just got an internet unstable message. I'm making sure I'm not locked
did, but
up.
you're back.
Okay. Okay. So on the bond, one of the biggest deficiencies is the name. So your entity name, exactly as it appears on your application, and if it's a corporation or LLC, has to match Arizona Corporation Commission. That name needs to exactly be listed on the bond as the principal. If you have a DBA, you would list that there as well. So if it was Jason's Building doing business as JBM Building, then that's what you would list on your bond on that principal line. Then the classification needs to be listed. So there's the sample bond form that you see right there, where the name of the company is on that first line, that top line, and then the surety company is listed below it. Then under license classification, you can see here it says KB2. It does need to say the descriptive name of the license as well. So KB2, dual residential, small commercial. And then you can see on the right-hand side, like my example, it shows the 9,000 for residential and 5,000 for commercial. And that's if you're choosing the minimum bond amounts. Then down below, the surety company obviously fills out most of this information, the dates and where they're notarizing and signing. So the date on the bond needs to be in today's date if you're applying today, or it needs to be current. So it can't be listed into the future. If it does, that would be a deficiency. You can't approve a license application for a bond that's not current today.
And Raul, just to answer your question, so you plan on doing just residential work that first year with a dual license. Our bonds are license bonds. They're not completion bonds or typical construction bonds. It's a license bond. So the bond is actually for the license itself. So if you're getting a dual license, then you would have to get both the residential and commercial regardless of the type of work you're planning to do.
Right. And the bond does need to be signed. So you need to sign the bond, or an authorized person from the license. So someone listed on the license application again. And then the bond company, they have a place where the attorney in fact signs and it's notarized. And then there's an official seal from the bond company. And that all has to be completed before you send it in. All right, workers' compensation. This is also an area that we get lots of confusion. If you have employees, you have to provide workers' compensation. And some people don't understand that even if everyone on the license is an officer, there's very few exceptions for workers' compensation. It is listed on the application, but most companies have to have workers' compensation.
Yeah, what is it, Julie? Just a sole proprietor who has no employees, and then a informal partnership that has no employees?
Right. It's a 50-50. So it's a sole proprietorship or a 50-50 partnership or LLC. So
yeah, it's very specific. It's yes. We just to be perfectly honest, we turned to Industrial Commission of Arizona and asked them to tell us what their requirements are, because It's outside of our agency. We're not responsible for workers' compensation, so we wanted the correct information to give to you. The exemptions from workers' compensation are very specific, so we would point you to ICA if you have any questions about it. Yeah, if you don't qualify for one of the exemptions, and most companies will not qualify for an exemption, you would just need to provide us that policy number, the issuing company, and the proof of self-insurance, or the
Right.
proof of self-insurance.
Right. So often people that do get workers' compensation, the workers' compensation insurance company will give you a certificate, and you can just upload that. But there is a spot on the application in the portal and the application to put your policy number and the insuring company's name.
Yeah, and so Cisco, to your question, so if it's just me, would I need to get workers' compensation? Again, it's really going to depend on how you set up your business, but either way, just talk to Industrial Commission, and then they'll be the ones to provide you the answer.
All right, additional documentation. If you are applying for a license that has a solar portion, you would need to provide us with a solar warranty. We do have an example of a solar warranty on our website, and you can base your warranty off of that, creating it for yourself.
And so
Also,
sorry, Julie. So we are a bit different in Arizona. Some states or other states are a bit different, I guess I should say, that they will provide you a stamp for solar work. Our classifications simply include solar work, or they do not include solar work. So I believe one of our plumbing licenses includes solar work. Both of our all of our electricals include solar work. So those allowances are built into the license classifications. It's not a separate stamp. But if you're planning on doing solar work, then you have to provide the example of the solar warranty. And Jesse just posted that in the chat. Sorry, Julie, go on.
Yeah. So often when people apply, perhaps the qualifying party or a member or officer on the application had has a license. If they want to cancel that license because they're now getting on this new license, you can submit that with the application. So there's a place where you can say, please cancel upon issuance of this new application. You can do that, or there are forms to just cancel a license, and you can do that at any point. Often also, qualifying parties often will do this. They'll submit a license inactivation form for a license that they're currently on because they are trying to solve the 1127 violation. So that says that a qualifying party can't be on more than one without common ownership. So you can be on this license. If you have common ownership, you can be on more than one, but it has to be 25% or more. If you're inactivating, you can do that within the application, inactivate upon issuance, or you can send a license inactivation form that's on our website at any point beforehand also.
Okay, so just to take you through real quick, cancellation would cancel the license. Inactivation, you're allowed to do twice in the lifetime of the license.
Yes.
And it allows you to inactivate the license for up to 5 years. Say, I don't know, say you broke your leg, or you're going to be you're going to be unable to perform the work under the license, or the economy takes a dive. You know, a lot of licensees in 2006 went license inactivation. It allows you to put a pause on that license. You are not allowed to perform any work while your license is inactive, but equally, your license is not being tooled. So whenever you apply, you get a 2-year license. If you inactivate, you can inactivate for up to the 5 years, but that 2 years is not being spent. And so you're able to drop your bond. You're not being charged for renewals. It's really up to you. Disassociation, if you're an owner, and you want to fire your qualifying party, you're going to file a disassociation. If you're the qualifying party and you want to quit, you're going to file a disassociation. If your qualifying party dies, disassociation. That's the purpose of that. And I can tell you, qualifying parties online, if you are no longer involved with that license, file the disassociation. You will be held responsible for any work performed while you did not file that disassociation. So keep your name and your file clean.
Right. So again, just going over the common application deficiencies. Qualifying party experience. Please be detailed, and remember to check the amount of years that we need. Most licenses, you need 4 years of experience. There are some exceptions. You can find that on our list of classifications. And I don't know if Jessie put that in the notes, but she can do that. Then there's the bond. Please make sure that you go over the information on the bond with your bond company. Make sure it's all, correct dates, everybody signed, the name is correct, the classification is correct. And then the IDs, make sure that they have not expired. We did get that a lot during the last year because of COVID, but make sure your ID is up to date and that it is included. Testing, again, provide the testing. You can upload that if you're doing it on the website, on the portal. Or if you've been on another license, then you would fill out the waivers. Background checks, make sure that they're within 90 days of the day that you apply. So I would recommend not getting your background check until you know that you have all your other information completed so that you don't go past that 90-day deadline.
Okay, so John is saying that there are no exam dates available until March 15. That's something good to know. We can reach out to PSI and require them to open additional testing seats. So thank you for letting us know, and we will reach out to PSI. So just give us a little bit of time, and we'll have PSI either rent a hotel or do whatever they need to do to be able to provide you guys the exam.
And John, the other thing you can do is send us an email at the licensing department because I have had people comment to me that information before, but it has been incorrect information. So please contact us at the licensing department. There's our email address, and we can reach out to PSI and give them your information to verify that that information is correct.
Yeah, and John, don't wait on the line for them. Sending us the email will be much quicker.
Yes.
Question from Carl: does apprenticeship account for qualifying experience? It absolutely does. So apprenticeship counts for experience. Any classes you took in high school, say you went to one of the JTEDs or a trade school in high school. Otherwise, those years count. If you have unlicensed experience, that counts. And if you worked for a family member, that counts. We also even include time as a minor. So I mean, obviously, if we're saying we include high school experience through a JTED, then yes, we are very accepting of experience. Oh, also any military training or experience that you had in military, that also is included or counts.
Even experience with if you're in the military and you built things in another country, that counts.
Yeah. Okay, so question from Victor. What's the difference between ROC and LLC? I think you mean a corporation and an LLC. So depending on there are various differences between different types of business entities. I would point you to Arizona Corporation Commission to make a determination as to what type of business entity you want to create. But I think, as Julie said, depending on what, so corporations and LLCs, you would register with Arizona Corporation Commission. For sole proprietors or partnerships, I don't believe you actually need to go to CorpCom, but what we recommend is that you do register your name with Secretary of State, because that would be the only way to protect that name for you. So if you do have a sole, or if you wanted to create a sole proprietorship or a partnership, again, that'd be Arizona Secretary of State. If you want to do an LLC or a corp, and you don't know what the differences are, unfortunately, we can't advise you, because then it gets into kind of financial advisor type situation as to what you want to do. But yeah, I would just suggest Corp Com for that. If you have experience with a family member, but they didn't have a license at the time, we don't care. Again, unlicensed experience counts. Julie.
Absolutely. Okay, so application fees. This is our schedule. It is listed on our website. I'm sure Jesse will include it in the chat. If you're doing a general commercial license, so the A, the B1, B2, there's the application fee, the license fee, and then the total amount. So the application fee, if you applied for a license and for whatever reason we returned the application or denied the application, we would keep the application fee. That's a one-time fee, but the license fee we would return to you. So when you apply for a license, that license is good for 2 years once it's approved, and then you have to renew every 2 years. Also, just to cover again, on the bond you get for the application, but you do also have to renew that bond when it becomes available. So the bond company will send you information to renew the bond. You need to do that. If that is not done, so if they cancel the bond, then we would have to suspend your license by operation of law. So make sure you stay up to date with renewing the license and renewing the bond. In regards to the application fees, you can see the schedule. Specialty commercial is $100 application fee, $480 for the license fee. The total is $580. When you get to the residential portions or license classifications, there's an application fee, there's the license fee, there's also a recovery fund assessment. If you really wanted to, you could pay for that recovery fund assessment with a cash bond, but most people use the recovery fund assessment, so it's just a portion of the license application and then a portion of your renewal every time you renew.
Great. And just to point out, the application fee would not be included with a renewal. So if you were a general commercial and you're renewing, then you would only be paying $580, not the $780. And then secondly, the recovery fund reduces to $270 on renewal. And just so you know, if you're not familiar, the Arizona Registrar of Contractors Residential Recovery Fund, that is all one title. And I thank you, that was all one breath. No, but what the recovery fund does is the recovery fund is absolutely necessary, Lionel. It is not optional. What it allows is for if anything goes wrong with a residential property, that property owner can turn to the registrar, file a complaint. At the end, if the licensee is found at fault for any poor work or abandonment, then the residential recovery fund can be available to eligible claimants for eligible items up to $30,000 up to per property, up to $200,000 per license. We will often see this with this being used with companies going out of business or new licensees just getting into trouble. It's the recovery fund is it's a great marketing tool for you as to why homeowners should use licensees rather than unlicensed. Yeah, the recovery fund is not optional. It is an assessment on your license.
And it is only for anybody who has a residential portion to their license. So if you're a dual contractor, that means you are allowed to do commercial and residential work, and the recovery fund assessment is applied to your application and your renewal.
So you've done everything you needed. You used the portal. You sent us the paperwork. However you're going to apply. Now what happens? We have 60 days, calendar days, to review that license application. The first 20 days are used for an administrative review. The last 40 days are used for a substantive review. I'm telling you what is required. What happens right now if you submit an application, and it has no deficiencies, on average, we're issuing the license within 5 days. If it has deficiencies, number one, it's dependent on you and your willingness and ability to work with us in resolving those deficiencies. But it's on average, I believe it was taking about 20 days if you have a deficiency on your license application. But again, the 60 days is what we are statutorily required to do, or you get a free license. What we're actually doing is much less than that. And on average, even with deficiencies, we're at like 6.7 days to issue a license. So if it came in today, we don't work weekends, but Monday, Tuesday, it would likely be issued if there are no deficiencies. A lot of applications do have deficiencies, though, 30 to 40%, depending on the month. When you have a deficiency, again, we will send you snail mail, we will send you an email, and we will call you. Make sure that you're responsive to your reviewer. They're working just to process the license applications and maintenance items. As soon as you're able to get them the information, they will. It's not as soon as they get it, but they will again begin working your license application to get it through. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so again, appreciate everyone attending. Apologize for going over time, but thank you for staying with us. Again, so the email that you registered for this call with, we are going to send an email with a survey link. We'd ask that you take it. This is a continuous improvement project for us. We're wanting to help you submit license applications more easily, more confident, and with fewer deficiencies. We're going to send you the YouTube link. Jesse put together a resource sheet of just different types of information that we've talked about here to provide just jog your memory whenever you're coming through it. And then a reminder. Okay, so this is my reminder as well as your reminder. Whenever you're filling out the application, either on paper or in the portal, it's going to ask if you attended this education seminar. So if you attended it, or if you watched it on YouTube, even if you didn't attend today's seminar, but you watched this video, we would ask that you do mark that you attended. We are using that to cross-reference those who attended with those who did not attend and see if there's a difference in the number of deficiencies. So that's the reason we're asking, and we're wanting this to be a beneficial time for you and for us. But otherwise, that's the end of our spiel. We're happy to stay on and answer questions.
There was a question regarding an electrical license. So each license only needs one qualifying party. Under that qualifying party, you can have several apprentices or journeymen working for you, but one qualifying party that's overseeing everything.
I have a question.
Sure, Larry.
Yes. Explain to me or detail what is the $2 million for the dual license? We're looking to build four units, in some cases 18 to 22. And we're into the affordable housing arena, and a commercial license gets steep.
Yeah, so the what you're asking about is, what he's asking about is the KB2 allows up to $2 million worth of work on the commercial side, correct?
Yeah, does that include the soft dollars as well as the foundational work, or what specifically?
Sure. So that that specific license was $200,000 in 2016-17. We went to the Governor's Regulatory Review Council and upped it to $2 million.
Okay.
Kind of what the thought behind the $2 million or the 200,000 was, kind of your one-story fast fancy food restaurants. It's going to be your smaller TIs. It's going to be like you're implying. It's not going to be your apartment complexes. It's going to be more of your smaller commercial jobs.
Well, in our case, it's a single story, kind of not to give too much details, but it's just single story affordable housing, 900 square foot units, and we'll be right there at the 2,200,000 range with the cost of adjustments. So that means we got to get a commercial. We'd have to go to the larger commercial if we were doing that.
I mean, there's always going to be change orders, and the cost is always going to increase. So, we have this price limit on the 61, I believe it is, as well, for 50,000. It's better to be safe than sorry. And if you're applying for the first time, then and you qualify for the B1, then I mean, get the B1 rather than the B2 and possibly run into trouble.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question in regards to the exams.
Yeah.
So I remember that you mentioned about reference materials. Is there like a certain place to get the reference materials, and is it like an open book for both exams, the law and the experience exam?
Sure. So the just to get the terminology common among everyone, we call it the Statute and Rules exam, and then the trade exams. The Statute and Rules exam, those materials are largely going to be free of charge. The trade exams, if it's going to be ICC or IRC, those materials, we don't provide them. PSI does not provide them. Here's where the director would tell you you should have those books anyway. So there's no real place for us to provide them for you for free if that's what you're asking. But that the reference materials listed in the bulletin are specific to the exam are what we would recommend. That's where the questions come from, and it is open book, both exams, the Statute and Rules exam as well as the trade exam.
Right.
Which, if you've taken an open book before, be careful with your time management, because that's where we can get into a lot of trouble.
Got it.
Cool. Thanks, sir. Any other questions?
No problem.
There's a question from Javier in there.
Other questions focus on the CR42, however. I'm looking to specialize in spray foam roofing, and any other categories will my experience in spray foam suffice. So if you're looking to only do spray foam roofing, I don't know exactly what your question is, but where you're, if you've only, so this is going to be common to a lot of the classifications. If you've only ever performed one type of work as part of the scope of a license, that experience might get you through the experience portion, but you might have trouble with the trade exam if you don't study. So Javier, if your experience is only spray foam and you only know spray foam as it relates to roofing, again, you might be okay on the experience portion of the application, but the trade exam is not going to be limited to spray foam.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I took the test. I passed the exam, so I wasn't sure if the
good job
spray foam roofing. I've never done shingles. So I'm like,
yeah,
but
cool.
Cool. Thank you.
Of course. Okay. All right. Now we're over time on both allotments. All right. So thank you for attending. I hope one of the other takeaways that we don't plan for is that you see how open and how willing we are to help you. Jessie has provided our contact information many times. It'll be on the resource sheet that she provides you. Feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer your questions. Again, when we said at the outset of this, we want to do everything we can to get you licensed if you're qualified. So we're here to help you. Turn to us, use us, and otherwise, thank you and good luck.